Welcome to Confessing the Faith, a theological. I'm your host, Sam Waldron, pastor of Grace Reformed Baptist Church in Owensboro, Kentucky, and the president of Covenant Baptist Theological Seminary. We come today to consider chapter 12 of the Confession, which takes up the very important subject of adoption. This is a wonderful and comforting biblical subject which well warrants our meditation after our study of justification in the previous chapter of the Confession. The text of this chapter of the Confession is almost verbatim that of the Westminster Confession, and this fact underscores the complete agreement of the Reformed with regard to the doctrine of adoption. It is one of the commonplaces of Reformed doctrine. Let's begin by reading its long single paragraph. All those that are justified, God vouchsafed, and for the sake of his only Son, Jesus Christ, to make partakers of the grace of adoption by which they are taken into the number and enjoy their liberties and privileges of the children of God, have his name put upon them, receive the spirit of adoption, have access to the throne of grace with boldness, are enabled to cry, Abba, Father, and are pitied, protected, provided for, and chastened by him as by a father, yet never cast off, but sealed to the day of redemption, and inherit the promises as heirs of everlasting salvation. This chapter emphasizes the importance of adoption in our personal salvation, and we shall consider the wonderful encouragement of this doctrine in that context. But before we do so, I want to set this doctrine against its larger biblical backdrop. The biblical backdrop of adoption requires a treatment under the two major headings: adoption in the history of redemption and adoption in the application of salvation. This structure deserves brief comment. Theologians commonly and very properly distinguish the history of redemption, what is called the Historia Salutis, or the history of salvation, from the application of salvation, what is called the Ordo Salutis, or the order of salvation. Under the Historia Salutis, the great central objective events of redemptive history, which have as their reference the people of God as a whole, as a corporate whole, are included: the incarnation, crucifixion, and resurrection of Christ, and also the coming of his Spirit on the day of Pentecost. Under the Ordo Salutis, the events which compose our personal and individual experience of salvation, things like regeneration, faith, justification, are studied with special reverence to the logical and causal order of their occurrence. Quite obviously, these two areas of study are both distinct and yet closely related, with the history of redemption forming the necessary backdrop for the study of the application of redemption. The structure of this exposition assumes and implies that adoption finds a significant place in both these areas of study. This means further that the teaching of the Bible regarding adoption and the history of redemption is indispensable for understanding its teaching regarding the adoption of the individual in the application of salvation. What needs to be emphasized is that in our study of this subject, we must carefully distinguish adoption in the history of redemption from adoption in the history and the application of salvation. Notwithstanding the close relation of adoption and the application of salvation and adoption in the history of redemption, failure to distinguish these things will result in confusion and misinterpretation of the biblical text, and this will lead to false and extreme views of the subject.